U.S. military just unveiled the most advanced aircraft ever built, the F-47. The skies over the Persian Gulf have already changed forever. But what's coming next is something no enemy on Earth has ever faced before. A machine so advanced, so lethal, so far beyond anything flying today, that when its existence was confirmed behind closed doors, even allied nations went silent. This isn't an upgrade. This isn't the next generation. This is an entirely different category of warfare. So the question isn't whether the F-47 changes everything. The question is, does anyone even stand a chance? Welcome back to Hidden Economy, the channel where the stories behind the headlines are always deeper than what you first see. It means a great deal to have you here today, and if this kind of in-depth, honest analysis is something you value, a subscription to Hidden Economy takes just 1 second and helps this community grow in a real way. Before we dive in, drop a comment below and let us know. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Whether you're in Texas, London, Karachi, or anywhere in between, this story touches all of us. On March 21st, 2025, something extraordinary happened in Washington, D.C. President Donald Trump walked into a room and changed the future of air power forever. He didn't announce a new policy. He didn't sign a bill. He unveiled a weapon. The United States Air Force's 6th-generation fighter jet, the F-47, was officially revealed to the world. And the moment that name was spoken out loud, defense analysts, foreign governments, and military experts around the globe stopped what they were doing and paid very close attention. This was not a rumor. This was not a concept drawing on a whiteboard somewhere in a laboratory. This was real. This was happening. Boeing, one of America's most powerful aerospace companies, had been awarded a contract worth $20 billion to build the most advanced manned combat aircraft ever designed in human history. The program had a name for years before the public ever heard it. Inside military circles, it was called NGAD, Next Generation Air Dominance, a classified, secretive, highly protected program that very few people knew anything about, the kind of program that doesn't show up in newspaper headlines, the kind that exists behind locked doors, security clearances, and decades of patient, expensive engineering work. And then, on that March morning in 2025, those doors opened. To understand why this moment matters so much, Hidden Economy needs to take you back, just a little. For the last several decades, the United States Air Force has operated with two primary advanced fighters. The F-22 Raptor, a fifth-generation air superiority machine introduced in the early 2000s, and the F-35 Lightning II, a multi-role fifth-generation platform used across the Air Force, Navy, and Marines. Both aircraft are extraordinary. Both are among the finest fighting machines ever built. But here is the reality that military planners understood years ago. The world was changing. Adversaries were learning. China was investing hundreds of billions into its own advanced air programs. Russia was developing new surface-to-air missile systems. The radar technology, the electronic warfare systems, the anti-aircraft networks that enemy nations were building. They were specifically designed with one goal in mind: to shoot down fifth-generation fighters. The F-22 and F-35 were built for a world that existed in the 1990s and early 2000s, and the threats of 2025 and beyond required something that world had never seen before. That something was the F-47. The numbers alone tell a remarkable story. The F-47 is built to fly at speeds exceeding Mach 2, faster than the speed of sound, twice over. Its combat radius, meaning how far it can fly into enemy territory and still return safely, exceeds 1,000 nautical miles. To put that in perspective, the F-22's combat radius sits at roughly 590 miles. The F-35 manages around 600. The F-47 leaves both of them far behind. That range is not just impressive on paper, it is strategically transformational. It means the F-47 can reach deeply contested areas around Taiwan, across the Pacific, deep into hostile airspace, without needing a refueling tanker. And that single fact dismantles decades of military planning by America's adversaries, who spent enormous resources calculating exactly how to target those vulnerable refueling aircraft. The Air Force confirmed plans to acquire at least 185 F-47 aircraft. That is a fleet large enough to reshape the entire balance of air power across multiple theaters simultaneously. Air Force Chief of Staff General David Alvin stood alongside President Trump that day and described the F-47 in 3 words: advanced, lethal, adaptable. Those 3 words were chosen carefully, because each one represents a category where the F-47 does not just improve on what came before, it operates in a completely different league. The world's most powerful air forces took notice immediately. Because what Hidden Economy wants viewers to understand clearly and completely is this: the F-47 was not built to fight today's wars. It was built to end tomorrow's before they begin. And the story of how it does that is only just getting started. There is a moment in every major weapons program when it stops being a promise and starts being a reality. For the F-47, that moment arrived quietly, not with a press conference, not with a parade, but with a single, understated confirmation from the United States Air Force Chief of Staff, General David Alvin. In September 2025, General Alvin stood before a packed audience at the Air and Space Forces Association conference in Maryland and made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the global defense community. The first F-47 is already being built, not planned, not designed, not on a drawing board, being built right now, inside Boeing's facilities, by real engineers with real materials on a real timeline. And Hidden Economy wants viewers to understand exactly what that means, because the details of where this program stands today are far more significant than most people realize. The budget, numbers that demand attention. The F-47 does not exist in isolation. It sits at the center of the largest single defense budget in American history, $1.5 trillion, announced by the Department of Defense under Secretary Pete Hegseth. Within that budget, the F-47 program carries some of the heaviest investment figures ever attached to a single aircraft platform. Research and development spending on the F-47 alone is projected to run into the tens of billions of dollars through 2029, after which the program shifts from development into full production and flight testing phases. The Next Generation Adaptive Propulsion Program, which will power the F-47's engines, received $490 million in fiscal year 2025 funding alone, with projections showing that number spiking to nearly $906 million by 2028, precisely when the aircraft is scheduled to make its first flight. These are not speculative figures. These are official, congressionally submitted budget numbers, and they tell a very clear story about how seriously the United States government is treating this program. The engine, the most exotic power plant ever designed. If the F-47's airframe is extraordinary, its engine is in an entirely different category of engineering achievement. Two of America's most powerful aerospace companies are currently competing for the engine contract. Pratt & Whitney with their XA-103 design, and GE Aerospace with their XA-102. Both companies are building physical prototypes right now. Both are being tested and evaluated simultaneously. What makes these engines unlike anything currently flying is a technology called the three-stream adaptive cycle engine. In simple terms, this engine can change how it operates, mid-flight, depending on what the pilot needs in that exact moment. It switches between a maximum combat thrust mode for high-speed engagements and a long-range cruise mode that increases fuel efficiency by 25% and extends range by 30% over any conventional fighter engine currently in service. The same engine that powers a Mach 2 sprint can shift seamlessly into a configuration that stretches the aircraft's range to distances no fighter has ever achieved before. But there is one more capability built into this engine that General Alvin and defense officials have been notably careful about discussing in public. The F-47's engine produces double the electrical power and cooling capacity of any engine currently flying on any military aircraft in the world. The reason that detail matters, and Hidden Economy wants to be precise here, is that directed energy weapons require enormous amounts of electrical power and thermal management to operate. Laser systems, high-powered microwave weapons, electronic attack platforms. The F-47's engine was not designed with that capacity by accident. The drone ecosystem, the F-47 is not flying alone. Perhaps the single most strategically significant detail about the F-47 is one that receives far less attention than the aircraft itself. It will never fight alone. The U.S. Air Force has confirmed plans to acquire more than 1,000 collaborative combat aircraft, autonomous drone wingmen, with a minimum of 2 assigned to every single F-47 in the fleet. These drones are not simple remotely piloted vehicles. They are AI-driven, weapons-capable, semi-autonomous combat platforms. The Anduril Fury, the General Atomics Dark Merlin, and Shield AI's autonomous systems represent the leading candidates, currently undergoing active flight testing. In April 2026, the Dark Merlin drones suffered a crash at General Atomics Grable test facility in California, caused by an autopilot miscalculation involving weight and center of gravity software. That incident was publicly confirmed and serves as evidence that this testing program is real, active, and ongoing, not theoretical. Meanwhile, the Anduril Fury successfully launched an AIM-120 AMRAAM missile during recent testing, one of the most capable air-to-air weapons in the American arsenal, demonstrating that these drone wingmen are being built and tested as genuine combat platforms, not supporting actors. The timeline, what has been officially confirmed. General Alvin confirmed in March 2026 that the F-47 program remains on track for its first flight in 2028. Boeing's personnel ramp-up has been described by senior Air Force officials as ahead of schedule. Reports, including imagery analysis from defense researchers, suggest variants of the F-47 may already be undergoing flight tests at classified facilities. The Air Force plans to have the first operational F-47 combat squadrons ready between 2028 and the early 2030s. And when that day arrives, The world will look very different from the sky above it. Every generation, once in a very long while, a single weapon changes everything, not just on the battlefield, not just in military strategy rooms, but in the entire calculation of global power. Who holds it, who challenges it, and who quietly accepts that the gap between them and their adversary has become uncrossable. The F-47 is that weapon. And Hidden Economy wants viewers to understand something clearly. The consequences of this aircraft extend far beyond aviation. They reach into economics, geopolitics, diplomacy, and the daily lives of hundreds of millions of people across the globe who will never once see this jet flying overhead. The China calculation, a 20-year plan, just got disrupted. For 2 decades, China's military strategy operated on a very specific assumption. American aircraft carriers need tankers, American fighters need refueling support, and tankers are slow, large, and vulnerable. China invested hundreds of billions of dollars building DF-26 anti-ship ballistic missiles and sophisticated surface-to-air missile networks, specifically engineered to target those high-value support aircraft first. Eliminate the tankers, and the fighters run dry. Ground the fighters, and American power projection collapses. It was a patient, calculated, expensive strategy. And for years, it worked on paper. The F-47 just made that entire calculation irrelevant. With a combat radius exceeding 1,000 nautical miles, requiring no tanker support, the F-47 can reach contested airspace around Taiwan, operate throughout the Indo-Pacific theater, and return safely without ever exposing a single vulnerable refueling aircraft to Chinese missiles. China's People's Liberation Army Air Force is currently flight testing 2 apparent 6th-generation prototype aircraft, the Chengdu J-36 and the Shenyang J-50. Both feature tailless designs. Both represent serious engineering efforts. But here's what independent defense analysts consistently point out. China does not yet possess a variable cycle engine comparable to the XA-102 or XA-103 competing for the F-47 contract. Their most advanced engine, the WS-15, is a capable 5th-generation power plant, but it cannot switch operational modes mid-flight. It cannot generate the electrical capacity required for directed energy weapons. And attaching 5th-generation engines to a 6th-generation airframe creates stealth compromises that no amount of design sophistication can fully overcome. The consequence is significant. China may have a 6th-generation aircraft that looks competitive. Whether it performs competitively against the F-47's full ecosystem of drone wingmen, multi-spectral stealth, and adaptive engines is a question that defense experts believe they already know the answer to. The Iran lesson. What day 90? Already revealed. The ongoing U.S.-Iran conflict, now entering its 90th day as of May 2026, has already demonstrated something that military strategists will study for decades. Iran's integrated air defense network, built over years with Russian and Chinese assistance, was dismantled in roughly 24 hours by 5th-generation aircraft and Tomahawk cruise missiles. Over 1,000 Tomahawk missiles were reportedly used in the opening phases of Operation Epic Fury alone. That is an enormous resource expenditure. Effective, but expensive. Now, consider the implications of deploying F-47s alongside their autonomous drone wingmen in that same scenario. The F-47's electronic attack capabilities, combined with AI-driven drone swarms capable of overwhelming radar systems simultaneously from multiple directions, would, according to defense analysts, have compressed that 24-hour timeline dramatically while consuming significantly fewer conventional munitions. The economic consequence of that distinction is not abstract. Every Tomahawk missile costs approximately $2 million. Reducing reliance on expensive munitions through superior electronic warfare and autonomous systems represents a strategic and fiscal advantage that compounds over every future conflict. The global deterrence effect, the message behind the machine. Hidden Economy wants viewers to consider something that rarely appears in defense headlines. The F-47 was not just built to fight wars, it was built to prevent them. Deterrence, the concept that an adversary chooses not to act because the cost of acting is simply too high, has been the foundation of American strategic thinking since the Cold War. And deterrence only functions when adversaries genuinely believe the capability is real. The public confirmation of the F-47's existence, its capabilities, its timeline, and its drone ecosystem was a deliberate, strategic communication. The Department of Defense under Secretary Hegseth has been explicit. The $1.5 trillion defense budget and the F-47 program are being announced loudly and publicly for a reason. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. Every nation currently calculating whether American military power can be challenged, outlasted, or outmaneuvered is now doing that calculation with one new, uncomfortable variable sitting at the center of their planning. A 6th-generation aircraft they cannot match, cannot track, cannot intercept, and, critically, cannot afford to build a credible counter to within any near-term time frame. The economic weight of supremacy. There is one final consequence that Hidden Economy believes deserves serious attention. The F-47 program, the drone ecosystem, the adaptive engine competition, the Space Force integration, the AI battlefield management systems, together, these represent the largest single investment in aerospace innovation in American history. That investment does not just build weapons. It builds industries. It funds engineering universities. It creates skilled manufacturing jobs in dozens of states. It drives breakthroughs in materials science, artificial intelligence, propulsion technology, and autonomous systems that inevitably migrate into the civilian economy over the following decades. The internet, GPS, the microwave oven, countless technologies that define modern daily life began inside classified military research programs. The F-47 ecosystem, if history is any guide, will eventually give the world technologies that nobody today can fully anticipate. And that consequence may ultimately matter more than anything that happens at 30,000 feet. So here we are, 90 days into a conflict that nobody predicted would last this long, a sixth-generation fighter already being assembled inside Boeing's facilities, drone wingmen firing live missiles in test ranges across California, and a defense budget so large, so deliberately ambitious, that it is sending a message not just to America's adversaries, but to the entire world. Hidden Economy wants to pause here for a moment, because this story is not just about aircraft. It is not just about missiles, radar systems, or engine technology. It is about decisions being made right now, in Washington, in Beijing, in Tehran, in Moscow, that will shape the next 30 years of global order. And those decisions affect every single person watching this video today, regardless of where they live, what language they speak, or what they believe. Questions worth reflecting on. Before looking at what comes next, Hidden Economy wants to ask viewers something directly. When a single nation develops a military capability so advanced that no other country on Earth can meaningfully challenge it within the next decade, what does that do to diplomacy? Does overwhelming military superiority make the world safer because adversaries choose not to act? Or does it create new tensions because nations that feel outmatched become unpredictable, desperate, and willing to take risks they would never otherwise consider? There is no simple answer to that question. Serious people disagree. Strategic thinkers on both sides of that debate hold genuinely compelling positions. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Hidden Economy reads them. The conversation that happens in this community is part of what makes this channel worth building. Here is a second question worth sitting with. The F-47 program costs tens of billions of dollars. The broader $1.5 trillion defense budget is the largest in American history. Is that the right allocation of national resources, given everything else the United States faces domestically? Or is investment in technological military superiority the very thing that protects the economic stability that funds everything else? Again, no simple answer, but an important question, and one that every informed citizen deserves to think carefully about. What happens next? Key dates and developments to watch for viewers who want to stay genuinely informed on this story. Hidden Economy wants to give a clear, honest picture of what the next several years look like. 2026, the F-47 continues active development and classified flight testing. Boeing's production ramp-up proceeds. The engine competition between Pratt & Whitney's XA-103 and GE Aerospace's XA-102 moves toward a final contract decision. Watch for any official Air Force statements about engine selection. That announcement will signal how close the program is to full production readiness. 2027, defense budget negotiations in Congress will determine whether F-47 funding levels hold, increase, or face any political pressure. The global response from China and Russia, in terms of their own sixth-generation programs, will become clearer. Watch specifically for any announcements about China's WSXX next-generation engine program, which would signal whether Beijing is closing the propulsion technology gap. 2028, the year everything becomes real. The F-47's first official flight is scheduled. If that timeline holds, and senior Air Force officials currently say it will, the moment that aircraft lifts off the runway for the first time will be one of the most significant events in aviation history. Every major defense publication, every intelligence agency, and every allied and adversary nation will be watching that day very carefully. 2029 to early 2030s, first operational combat squadrons. The F-47 transitions from a test program into a deployed military asset. The drone wingman ecosystem reaches operational maturity alongside it. This is the window when deterrence theory either proves itself or gets tested in ways nobody wants to see. How to stay informed. Hidden Economy encourages every viewer to follow this story through credible primary sources. The Air and Space Forces Association publishes detailed, accurate reporting on the F-47 program directly from official briefings. The Department of Defense budget documents, publicly available, contain the actual funding figures behind these programs. Cross-referencing what officials say publicly against what the budget numbers actually show is one of the most reliable ways to understand what is genuinely prioritized versus what is political messaging. Be cautious of sources that present speculation as confirmed fact. Be equally cautious of sources that dismiss the F-47's significance without engaging seriously with the technical and strategic details. The truth, as Hidden Economy always aims to present it, sits in the verified facts, not in the loudest voices. A final thought: the significance of this moment. History does not always announce itself clearly. Sometimes the moments that change everything look, from the outside, like press conferences, like budget announcements, like a general standing at a podium describing an aircraft that most people will never see with their own eyes. But those moments matter. They matter because the decisions made inside them ripple outward, across decades, across borders, across the lives of people who never once thought about fighter jets or drone wingmen or adaptive cycle engines. The F-47 is not just the most advanced aircraft ever built. It is a statement about where the world is heading. And Hidden Economy believes that understanding that statement clearly, honestly, and without fear is exactly what an informed and engaged global community deserves.